Welcome to Latte with a Lawyer, a podcast dedicated to bringing you the stories of some of America's most successful lawyers, figuring out what makes them tick, how they creatively solve problems, and how others aspiring to be them can follow in their footsteps.
Okay, folks, welcome to another episode of Latte with a Lawyer. I'm your host, Jonathan Brickman, and it's still the morning. We have with us from Abrams Fensterman, Carolyn, I'm going to pronounce your middle name. Reinach Wolf. Good morning. How are you?
Morning. I'm good. Thank you.
Nice to have you. So it's still morning. So we have to ask you, what's your favorite beverage of choice to get started in the morning?
I'm probably like most people around the world.
Coffee. Okay. You know, it's funny. I said to someone in the last episode, I said, I need to start keeping a database because it's quite a range of what people have. It's not just coffee, actually. A lot of people don't drink coffee. They drink water. They drink sweetened tea. I mean, you name it, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I start with coffee, but I actually switch to tea for the rest of the day. Otherwise, I'd be bouncing around my office endlessly for the rest of the day.
Yeah, the coffee it doesn't seem to affect me. Maybe I'm kidding myself, but it doesn't seem to. It's more psychological than anything, part of the routine. But anyway,
you're talking to a mental health lawyer, so
now I know. We're gonna have maybe a therapy session here. I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, tell us about the kind of work that you do.
Well, my area of practice, my mental health law practice, we do a variety of different subspecialties within the mental health law practice. We represent hospitals doing commitment hearings, we do guardianships, we do discrimination cases. One of my partners does criminal mental health cases. My particular niche is pretty much exclusively working with families who have seriously mentally ill family members, substance use disorder, sometimes medical issues, traumatic brain injuries that result in psychiatric symptoms, to help them navigate through the very complicated and not always very supportive mental health system, healthcare system. I'm actually a hospital administrator, hospital risk manager by background before I went to law school. So I have a pretty broad knowledge of the healthcare system as a whole.
Sure. Yeah.
And I bring that to my practice and to my clients to help them understand the landscape and ultimately come up with a roadmap or a plan in order to help their loved one get into treatment, stay in treatment, become more stable, bring in supportive services that might be helpful and supportive for the families, and move forward from there.
Very interesting. So how long were you a hospital administrator?
I was a hospital administrator, I guess about 4 years. And then I left the job that I actually really loved to go to law school because I'd wanted to be a lawyer, I think, since I was 5 years old and was just too intimidated by the idea. So it was kind of I was at a crossroads. I didn't have kids yet, and it was something I wanted to do. As a hospital risk manager, I worked a lot with outside counsel for the city hospital that I work for. And so I applied to law school and I thought, well, if I get in, great. If I don't, I have a whole career that I really enjoy. And they called my bluff and they accepted me to law school. And so, but I knew I wanted to stay in the healthcare system because that was really my great love and my background.
So it's very interesting. My older brother's actually been a CEO of healthcare systems for his whole adult life, and so I understand that that ecosystem there. I mean, so you said you wanted to be a lawyer. Why? Where did that come from?
I'm not sure. Maybe because I was very chatty and good at debating. And I always had a strong sense of justice and of fairness and of doing the right thing. My dad actually lost his family during the Holocaust. So I grew up having a parent, who very much understood prejudice, understood injustice, understood, tragedy in large part. And so I think some of it was that, as well as just, it always interested me. I grew up with my grandparents living underneath us, and I would watch Perry Mason with them almost every night. So I think it was a combination of all those things that drew me.
Where'd you grow up? In New York City?
Yeah, born and raised Upper East Side of New York.
Oh, Upper East Side. We're on the Upper East Side.
77th Street between 1st and 2nd.
Ah, very good.
And I went to public school my whole schooling career. Learned a lot. I had friends who lived in the city projects and whose parents were on welfare. And I had friends who lived on Park Avenue and had maids and butlers. So, and everybody in between, including me. So I had a good perspective on, pretty much the whole spectrum of the world, I guess. And
yeah. Absolutely. New York City. One of my brothers lives on the east side of New York. That's what I was curious. Not far from where you are. We're Bostonians, but we've moved around.
Well, I have a master's from the Harvard School of Public Health. So I lived in Brookline for a year and loved it. It was a lot easier to manage getting around than New York is.
Yes. Although in some ways, New York is pretty easy because it's the transportation, it's a grid, but Boston's confusing. I mean, it's much smaller, but.
True.
Yeah. Anyway, very, very interesting. But so what about your family background? I mean, was anyone else a lawyer?
Nobody in my family. My dad was a salesman and my mom was a special ed teacher in the public school system.
Okay.
So no, it's kind of hard to trace why I wanted to do this, but for some reason I did.
Got it. Well, I mean, listen, obviously, we share the same background, Jewish, but you either want to become a lawyer or a doctor, right? Professional.
Right, or an accountant. And math was never my forte. I break out into a cold sweat when I have to balance my checkbook. So I knew that was out as a career.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm trying to think of the other one. If you went back and listened to the shows, there's another one with a similar background. I'm sure you know who she is. At the firm. Where are you in? Where do you live?
I live in Manhattan, but the main office for the firm is in Lake Success, New York, in Long Island.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Oh, but do you go to that office? You work out of your home? Oh, you do?
No, you can see I'm in my office.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad commute from the Upper East Side to where we are. We're right over the Queens border.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Off most of the major highways, so it's not a bad commute.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's an easy commute, but I've been on that road. But
yeah, it's not fun, but it's distance-wise, it's not too bad.
Yeah. I mean, listen, LaGuardia is close to New York, but I mean, it could take you who knows how long, depending on the time of the day, right?
Yes, for sure.
So you mainly work and advocate for the family. Mm-hmm. Give me an example of a case that you would work on, or what's kind of your typical scenario.
I could get a call from parents of adult children. Yeah. Anywhere from early 20s, 30s, sometimes 40s, who say that their son or daughter has a history of bipolar disorder, doesn't have a lot of insight, goes off their medication, is acting out or exhibiting symptoms, and does well on the medication, but just, again, doesn't have any insight and know that they need to take their medication or want to take it. And these medications do have side effects for some people. Yeah. So I do an initial consultation and I take a full history. And as a hospital risk manager, I learned how to do that, take a full, really clinical history as well as legal history. Sometimes they get caught up in the criminal justice system or have issues with their landlords and eviction proceedings. other sorts of legal intervention. Sometimes there are matrimonial issues, family law issues. So I take a full history, and then I outline for the family members what are their rights in the system and what are the individual's rights in the system. And then I have what I call my toolkit. I go through what are the options. Should we involuntarily commit their loved one, and how can we go about doing that? From a 911 call to a mental health warrant, depending on what the circumstances are and the specific facts of what's going on. Do we need to bring in a psychiatric case manager? And I have a couple I work with who are wonderful. Do we need to get an order of protection? Do we need to bring a guardianship proceeding? Do we need to get a mental health warrant to try and get them hospitalized? So I go through what are all the options in the system in which I work and that I'm familiar with. And then ultimately the goal is to come up with a roadmap or a plan. Let's start with this and move to that. Maybe we get them hospitalized. Then I work with the family on a discharge plan so that when they leave the hospital, they're in an outpatient program and we can make a referral. They go to see a private psychiatrist. Maybe we need a guardianship petition at that point because they can't manage their life affairs or make decisions about where to live and how to manage money, especially people with very large sums of monies. That can be a problem and does become a problem for the family. So maybe we need a guardianship and somebody to protect that and manage that. And so that's basically how my consult ends. And then it depends on which track we're going to take in order to get help for the family and for the person who has the illness.
I mean, the way you're describing sounds more like, case manager as opposed to like legal ease kind of stuff. So are you drafting? So tell me about the legal side of it.
Well, for example, a mental health warrant.
Yeah.
We draft the papers, we ask the judge to issue a warrant. It's a civil warrant. People don't get arrested. They don't go to jail. They're brought by the sheriff's department to the courthouse in normal days. And since COVID, many times it's put in front of a camera.
Right.
They're assigned free legal counsel. The judge holds a hearing. It's very dramatic and somewhat adversarial because I need the family to be my main witnesses since they have the most firsthand knowledge about the individual. If the judge is convinced from a legal perspective that we've met our legal criteria, which is suffers from a mental illness and poses an imminent risk of harm to self and or others, the judge can issue an order to have the sheriff take the person to a psychiatric emergency room for an evaluation. So it then becomes the hospital's decision as to whether they meet the criteria or should be admitted, but at least we can get somebody to the emergency room with supervision and by court order.
Okay.
So sometimes that's a better route to take than just having a family show up in the emergency room.
Got it. And any of these cases that require litigation?
Well, there is a hearing. There,
There's a hearing.
It's not litigation as you think of in terms of lawsuits,
Yeah.
but these are full-blown trial court level judges and parts of the court.
Bench trials where you're going before a judge.
Right, basically. So,
Okay.
they are full-blown hearings. And so sometimes we do that. There are other cases we have to go to family court sometimes to get orders of protection because somebody could be threatening or acting out in a way that is scary to the family. Sometimes it's elderly parents who have their loved ones still living with them, but have some fear of what they might do. Most of the time, people who have serious mental illness are not violent, but there are times, where that's the situation. And so we help families work through that system.
Contrary to what we hear on television.
Yes, there's a lot of misinformation out there about serious mental illness, which I work really hard to try and correct that and give correct information. You know, the majority of people with serious mental illness are the victims more of violence than they are the perpetrators.
Right. Yeah, I would think so. I was kind of leading you down that path for my own benefit. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's
No, I know.
true.
It is. I know. It's anyway, a lot of the stuff gets hijacked for other reasons, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So are you the only one in the firm that is involved in this kind of practice? You have others. I know you have a family law practice too, right? Yeah.
We are the mental health law practice within the firm.
Okay.
We do coordinate often with other areas of law, trusts and estates, the family law, matrimonial law area, sometimes employment law issues, because we do those types of discrimination cases.
Oh, sure.
Somebody
Yeah.
has a psychiatric diagnosis and there's loss of job or other types of issues. So landlord tenant, sometimes we do a fair number of cases representing co-op boards or condo boards. They have somebody in the building who's off their medication, acting out, needs an evaluation. They don't want to evict them, but it's really difficult in terms of the rest of the building. So we work with the building to try and get some sort of resolution that can get treatment for the person and get some peace and tranquility for the neighbors.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine how all these things sort of bleed into other issues, right? Related to that.
Right. And it's not just within our firm. I get calls from outside attorneys from other firms, other practices who come and say, this case has some mental health aspect to it. So I end up co-counseling these cases very often, or being a consultant or an advisor in the mental health space when, you know, it involves other types of subjects.
Got it.
Types of cases.
Is it increasing, you think, in society, these issues? It seems like it.
It has over the 30 plus years that I've been doing this.
Yeah.
Certainly COVID made it a big trajectory increase.
Oh, it
People are
did.
very stressed and anxious. The younger people, the issues of school and not being able to go to school and remote learning and teaching, and also families who normally would place their family members or help support them to live independently brought them home because of the pandemic. So they got to see firsthand and right in their faces what they might not see on a daily basis with their loved one living under the same roof.
Right. But it
So
seems like
that's,
there's less of a stigma, though. I mean, people are more open about, right?
yeah, no, it is lessening. And I think the more accurate information gets out there, the better. I work really hard to do programs, I write a blog for Psychology Today to really give people the right information. But, you know, certainly the media can be helpful, but is not always helpful in putting out the difference between somebody who has a serious mental illness and maybe is a sociopath or really a criminal, or does these obviously, you know, mass shootings, and, you know, they sort of mash it all together when that's not always the case. And so that feeds the stigma. But again, you know, it's really important to separate out what people's actions may be because there's something else going on, and what somebody with a diagnosed serious mental illness, like any other illness, you know, diabetes,
Right.
heart conditions, whatever else they might have. This is another diagnosis, at least from my perspective.
Yeah.
But the stigma has kind of separated mental illness or mental health, you know, as an illness or a disease from other more, you know, quote unquote, acceptable illnesses.
Right. Yeah, no, actually, someone I lived close by when I lived in the DC area that went through a very serious bout, was institutionalized. And without getting into all the details, but he came out of that on the other side and actually started a business to make it much more accessible for people to get access instead of the very expensive institutional approach. And you see
Yeah, I mean,
more
and
and more of
that's a
that.
problem. Funding, getting money, outpatient programs. It's very costly to be an inpatient in a hospital.
Yeah.
And if you were to, if we were to set up better outpatient avenues, better outpatient programs, I'm very big on preventive and being proactive.
Yeah.
Rather than waiting till it escalates to the point where somebody has to be taken off the street and hospitalized.
Sure.
So if you had better housing, more mental health professionals in the field, better outpatient services, and also a change in the law, that I think is problematic too. It's a very high standard in the law to get somebody an intervention, which came about because of the abuses in the system, which really don't exist in the same way as years ago. And also the confidentiality laws, the HIPAA, and which is federal, and the state confidentiality laws. So I very often have a family who has their loved one living with them. They have a decompensation. They take them to the emergency room. They know they're admitted. And then because the person's mad about being in the hospital, says, I don't want you speaking to my family. I don't want you sharing any information. So the family gets shut down, even though they know they're there. They brought them there. They're living and supporting them. And they're going to be the ones to bring them home and have them live with them or support them. And yet they get shut out of the planning. They don't
because
know
of privacy, right? There's a big wall.
So there has to be some compromise, I think, in the law where families can participate, maybe meeting certain criteria. So it's shown that they're there to be supportive and in a positive way. They're not just there because they want ammunition and a divorce down the road or something. But families need to be able to know what the course of treatment is, what the discharge plan is, what are the expectations. Is the person willing to take their medication going forward or not? Are we going to go back around the same bend yet again? So that's a real problem, I think, in the system.
Yeah. I've talking about you said it was less I think maybe the way people are treated in these facilities, but I had a call with a plaintiff attorney here that represents people that where I live is like the capital of substance abuse facilities here. I'm in Delray Beach.
Oh, sure.
So, right. And she does a lot. This particular lawyer is like a zealot for it and represents a lot of these patients that are abused badly in these facilities. Sexual assault.
But is that a hospital or are these?
No. These are like clinics, right? These treatment facilities.
Right.
So you don't get involved with any of that kind of work where people are just.
No, we don't do lawsuits. I refer those out.
Okay.
And we represent a lot of hospitals in the area and work closely with outpatient mental health centers. But the problem in the addiction world in particular, and these types of programs, there's really no oversight. In the hospital world, there's the Joint Commission on Accreditation. So there are criteria and they're surveyed and they're overseen. And so there is some checks and balances to the treatment of patients and the quality of care. That doesn't happen a lot in the outpatient residential therapeutic world, especially in the substance use disorder world, even more than the mental health programs, because there are some really excellent programs that we refer clients to that do a really great job with serious mental illness, sometimes dual diagnosis. They have substance use disorder issues as well, or other issues, but there really is no oversight. And so this is, a big money maker. And if nobody's really coming in to make sure they're doing what they profess to do, that's a problem.
Yeah, that's surprising to hear that there is no regulation with that.
It's very rare. I actually was at a networking meeting yesterday for one of the big centers. It's a substance use disorder program, although they can manage some psychiatric issues way out in Long Island, and they are accredited by the Joint Commission. So that means they are overseen and they are looked at and they are surveyed, but that's rare.
That's interesting. That's kind of disappointing to hear that. That needs to change. Yeah.
And families really don't know. They're desperate. They want to get help for their, family member. The cost is astronomical, 30, 40, 50, 60,000 a month. And that's why we help our clients to identify the programs we know and refer to and have had good experience with, and get feedback from our clients that they had a good experience. My case managers know and have been to and have transported to a lot of these programs. So we have, a referral network that we use, psychiatrists, psychologists, these programs, outpatient programs. So we've sort of done the legwork for the client. But most of the time, families don't know and they're desperate and they're sold a bill of goods. Oh yes, we can treat this and address that. And, and then they find out that's really not what's happening.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And is your practice New York Metro?
It's New York State because we're all admitted in New York, but I get calls from all over the country.
Okay.
And, I can help guide people through what to look for, what questions to ask, set up a system for them. If it requires, a full-blown legal intervention or some sort of legal practice, then I find local counsel to work with because I'm only admitted in New York State.
Okay. Okay. Good. All right. Well, listen, this is a good sort of segue. So if someone wants to, reach you and learn more about your practice, the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, my email is cwolf@abramslaw.com. The website for our firm is abramslaw.com, and you can find us, by going through the website.
Yep.
It has everybody's credentials and PR that they do and information, background, bios, and so on. My office number is 516-592-5857. I'm always happy to answer questions or, do an initial intake and see if we can be helpful to families, give them some direction. And, but email is probably the best way to find me.
Okay. Excellent. Well, good. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. I mean, one other thing that I direct families to because it actually is a good overview of the practice. The New York Times did an article about my practice, February 10th of 2013. Hard to believe it's almost 10 years later, but it's called A Guide in the Darkness.
Ooh.
And I often direct families, to take a look at that. It was front page of the New York Times Metro section. But the reporter did a good job of explaining what we do and the uniqueness of what we do.
Oh, good. Well, you're doing a good service. So appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, I love what I do, and it's good work.
Yeah. No, I agree. All right. Well, listen, it's been great to have you once again, Carolyn Wolf from the law firm, and everyone shortens it these days. I see that Abrams Fensterman, but you say so Abrams Law is the website.
Right. The website, is abramslaw.com.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you bet. And this is, by the way, sponsored by EmotionTrac, which is a legal tech platform which supports litigators that want to get pre-trial insights for mediation and trials.
Oh, interesting.
So thanks again, Carolyn.
You're welcome. Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Bye.